So Carlos, as I said before, Carlos Bermudez is our vice chair of the chapter. Carlos is a retired 30-year veteran of the NYPD who was assigned to the Emergency Service Unit for the last 11 years of his service. The duties included commanding officer of the Weapons of Mass Destruction Response Team, as well as the operations coordinator of the Emergency Services Unit. Carlos participated in the planning and execution of security measures for all the major events held in New York City, such as the UN General Assembly, U.S. Tennis Open, visits by the President of the United States, baseball postseason games, parades, and the New York City Marathon. Carlos began his career with Major League Baseball at the start of 2013, the 2013 baseball season, and is currently a resident security agent. He's been assigned to a wide variety of sensitive security assignments to include the All-Star Week, the League Championship Series, the World Series, VIP security, international events, and baseball and softball development events. So with that, Carlos, I'm going to make you the presenter.
All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
All right, great. So hi, again, my name is Carlos Bermudez. I've been a resident security agent since 2013, as you have been told. I'm still a current resident security agent, and I'm going to present to you some of the general security concerns that major sports leagues face. Some of these topics can go down rabbit holes, and I can talk about them for a very long time, but I'm just going to continue to just give you a little taste of each area. And for those of you that are sports fans, then you can start understanding what is going on behind the scenes. So the topics I'm going to discuss tonight, I'm going to touch on some of the league security programs, stadiums and arenas. I'm going to talk about the athlete, DHS Safety Act, and how that sort of drives the security measures that we put in place, credentials, postseason issues, international event issues, and drones. And then I'll have an opportunity to answer some questions. So let's get right into it. The Major League Baseball started the resident security agent program in the early 1990s. It was the first league to develop such a program, and the other leagues soon followed. What the resident security agent program consists of is predominantly active law enforcement members. It could be federal, state, local, doesn't matter. Many of the security agents are very high ranking in their particular departments, and some of them are chiefs in their departments. These security agents are assigned to facilities such as like Citi Field, Yankee Stadium, MetLife Stadium, and the agents develop working relationships with the security staff, with the executive staff of the team, and the team staff. So that way, information can flow in two directions, from the players and staff to the security agent, and then from the league down to the players and stadium staff. There's a handful of agents assigned to each facility. And during every regular season game, there is one agent present in the stadium. And they're there to provide consultation to the team if necessary. They're also there to ensure that league guidance is adhered to. They're also there to monitor and report incidents to the league, such as field jumpers. And that's, you get some fan that decides to run on the field before, during, after a game. Any serious injuries that occurred during the game or prior to the game, such as, and this has happened during batting practice, a fan would fall from an upper level and get seriously injured. Any incidents involving officials or umpires or any players, whether it's on or off the field. The resident security agent is sort of the conduit for gathering the information from the affected person and getting the initial details and then making sure that's passed on to the league. If it's something urgent, then it doesn't matter what time, then the agent is going to make notifications to the proper people. The last thing any of the league commissioners want to experience is getting a phone call about something serious happening during one of the games and not already being given a heads up. Some of the things that can happen to players or umpires or officials off the field are things stolen from their hotel room, and that happens quite frequently. Receiving threats via social media or sometimes even direct messaging, or burglary of their homes while they're out on the road somewhere. So those are some of the things that the resident security agent would be involved in, at least initiating the investigation. Resident security agents also assist with VIPs. This would happen mostly during the postseason, where the commissioner or team owners need escorts to the stadium, or let's say a celebrity that's singing the national anthem and then becomes a guest of the commissioner needs escort. During the postseason, resident security agents are assigned to critical areas such as clubhouse entrances and to the umpire families. Why the umpire families? Because the umpire families typically are not a fan of a team that's in the playoffs, and they'll sit there and chat amongst themselves and not really pay attention to the game. And fans around them, as the game progresses, notice this and start figuring out that they are either player family members or umpire family members. And sometimes, depending on how the game is going, they can be harassed. So now, why did Major League Baseball implement such a program and use mostly active law enforcement officers? Well, law enforcement officers sort of have developed a sixth sense, and they can pick up on things or people being out of place that perhaps someone without many years of experience can do. So the program has been so successful, as you can see, as I've stated, other leagues have picked up on it. And many of the resident security agents that work for Major League Baseball also work for other leagues, and sometimes multiple leagues. Right, so now I'm going to talk about stadiums and arenas, as well as league security policies, prohibited will and clinching scenarios. So let's talk a little bit about stadiums and arenas. They're unique. You will not be able to find two that are the same. Some are planted right smack in the middle of urban areas, whereas some are in more rural areas and have a lot of space around them. What is unique is the environment around each one of these facilities. And being that these environments are unique, the league really relies upon the team to provide adequate security at each one of the facilities. Now, the league gets involved setting sort of parameters or guidance regarding security, but the security of the facility is left almost completely up to the team itself. A lot of these team established security measures are to enhance the fan experience, and that's a common theme throughout the the development of procedures, not only in the security realm regarding stadiums and arenas, but pretty much anything having to do with stadiums and arenas. They're really trying to enhance the fan experience even before the fan arrives at the gate for entry. All right, so let's talk about some league security policies. These are just some of the general policies that the league sort of sets some guidance on. This is not a complete list. I would not want to sit here and go through slide after slide of things that the league provides guidance on, but I just want to touch on a couple that are on this list, such as social media monitoring. Now, social media is a great resource for the teams to sort of catch threats or attempts before things actually happen. I've seen this in action where people on social media claim that they're going to attempt to get within a stadium, get into a stadium at some point, and typically there's a post or the post has a picture of what they're wearing at the moment, and the teams are really sharp with their cameras and who's monitoring the cameras and the gates, that we have been able to capture many of the people that were trying to get in without a ticket. This, of course, has increased when the postseason kicks in. A lot of fans that really can't afford the inflated ticket prices or couldn't get a ticket and still wants to get in, they try, and if they are posting it on social media, if they're mentioning it, usually it gets captured and they are prevented from entering. What's also amazing is, and this has nothing to do with social media, but within these stadiums, the camera operators have gotten so good, and the cameras have gotten so good that someone shoplifting from a team store on, let's say, the main concourse level is observed on a camera and followed as that fan makes it all the way to their upper deck seat. And once they're seated, then security moves in and makes an arrest or escorts him to the police, and they make the arrest. Another thing that I'd like to talk about is bag inspections and fan screening. And one of the things that the league does dictate is the settings on the walk-through metal detectors. We've kind of found a sweet spot in the settings, depending on the device used, so that, you know, belt buckles and things like that aren't captured, but the things that we're trying to prevent to get into the stadiums are being captured. So talking about items trying to get into the stadium, let's talk a little bit about some prohibited items. This particular list is a little outdated. On here, you can see it has some noise-making devices, and it's still a prohibited item in American stadiums. But you'll see, as I talk later about international events, that noise-making devices sometimes is part of the local culture and can cause a problem when everybody shows up with them. You will see that banners are not on here, large banners. And last season, there were some incidents where political banners were being dropped at games. And the banners are quite large and could cause harm to people below. And it's not yet added to this particular prohibited items list, but you'll see that in some other situations, it is. So this is another prohibited items list from MetLife Stadium. As you can see, it has slightly different items on here that you didn't see on the prior list, such as seat cushions. and I found it unusual that it says seat cushions of any size except those for medical needs. Now, how do they know it's medical needs? Do you have to bring proof? That, to me, that's a little strange, but nonetheless, it's on the list. On this list, you could also see it has banners of any size. So MetLife Stadium does have, and this is a pretty updated list, is updated with their prohibited items. The next list for prohibited items, because I don't want to forget about hockey or basketball, is Madison Square Garden. And here, I just want to bring your attention to one of the items on the list, and it's video cameras and recording devices. And I think virtually every person walking into the arena will have a video camera or recording device with them. But I feel that they are trying to keep out professional video cameras and recording devices, which are also prohibited at baseball stadiums. And lastly, I want to talk about clinching scenarios at stadiums and arenas. These photos were taken during the Chicago Cubs run in the World Series. And these these pictures were taken well after the game was underway. So you can see that there is just a mass of people out there, and understandably, because Chicago was devoid of a championship for so long, the fans are really out there, and Chicago Cub fans are very devoted. So this is something that is concerning if the World Series was won in Chicago. Luckily, it was clinched in Cleveland. I mean, Chicago did win, but it was not at home, which makes things a lot easier because we don't have to worry about what all of these fans plan to do at the moment their team wins. Are they going to rush in the stadium? Are they going to overwhelm the gates? What is going to happen? And this is not just a Chicago problem. This was a recent picture from outside the Atlanta Braves' new stadium. This is the area called the Battery, and it's designed to sort of host fans that otherwise didn't want to or couldn't get into the stadium, so they can spend their money at the shops and restaurants, etc., in the area. We were very concerned if, again, Atlanta, won in Atlanta, what would these people in the Battery do? And again, we didn't have to worry about that. The series was finished in Houston. All right, let's talk now about the athlete. And one thing the athlete gets involved in sometimes, and it's a double-edged sword, is social media. Now, social media is great for the athlete to connect with his fans and really, have a good experience with the fans. But also, it's terrible platform to meet people because so many bad things can happen. So, for example, athletes believe, or some do, that there is anonymity there because perhaps they're not a known face like Aaron Rodgers or Alex Rodriguez or Derek Jeter when they were playing. They feel that they're just a second-tier player. Nobody really knows what they look like. Nobody knows who they are. That they can go on social media, even use a different name. That may work for some of them, but the element that's out there looking to make money from athletes, sort of monitor athletes or look for them on social media to entrap them and somehow extort money from them. That happens more frequently than becomes known in the public. Also, social media can expose details about the personal life of the athlete. That could lead to stalking incidents, such as many celebrities have suffered. The leagues try to do what they can during the off season or during training camp to teach the athletes what the dangers are of using social media. Most heed the warnings and pretty much stay off, or they have someone that they hire that takes care of their social media. Some decide to tread on their own and do what they want. They are adults, and some of them get themselves in trouble. So I'm gonna give you two scenarios that occurred. The first one is athlete, and we'll call it athlete A, uses social media to set up a date. And this is not a well-known athlete. Photos are exchanged, and it doesn't have to be nude photos or anything like that. Just photos are exchanged. And then ultimately the athlete receives a threat to expose the athlete unless money is paid. Another scenario is athlete B uses social media and posts a photo of their child still wearing a school uniform while holding their pet dog. A fan figures out what school the child goes to and then follows the child home eventually to find the player. Neither one of these scenarios panned out to anything. The one that demanded money disappeared. It was just a threat from overseas. And the fan that followed the child home was found not to be a threat and just a casual fan. I will tell you that there are fans out there that have sources in local governments that if something's going on with a prestigious athlete, that person in local government will pick up the phone and call those fans up. It's just amazing to me how, like I've been to an event with a player that was supposed to be semi-private, that when we arrived to the location, there's 15 people there with baseball cards that they want the player to sign. The next thing that happens to athletes in some cases is extortion, and even rookies that are on the bottom of the salary chart regarding pay still make a lot more than the average person, and they are not immune from these extortion attempts. It typically involves an international athlete that has relatives or family that are remaining behind in the country of origin. The athlete can be one that's expecting to get signed, and athletes get signing bonuses, a large sum of money. The athlete could be signed already, or it could be a player that's been playing for a long time and still has family elsewhere. So they'll receive a threat, and on occasion, a kidnapping is involved of a family member, and the local authorities get involved and resolve it somehow. Now, one way that the leagues combat this is that they also have resident security agents, or whatever that particular league calls their agents, in these countries where athletes are being developed. And those resident security agents have connections to various law enforcement agencies there. And also there are investigative units in each one of the leagues that gets involved as well. And for the most part, a lot of these extortion attempts based on threats to family members in foreign countries, again, don't lead to anything. But occasionally the kidnapping will happen and will get people's attention. Next, I'm going to discuss the Department of Homeland Security Safety Act. The Safety Act is one of the driving forces behind a lot of the security measures that the leagues are implementing or have implemented. It provides important legal liability protection. Sporting venues strive to achieve Safety Act designation, and there are two levels. The first level is designation, and the second level is certification. Now, at the designation level, you get limited liability protection. Whoever the applicant is will have to provide some liability protection on their own. If you are designated as a certified Safety Act participant, then you get full liability protection. However, the liability protections only apply to claims arising out of a terroristic act. And out of all the things that have happened at stadiums or at other locations that or other institutions that have applied for and have gotten Safety Act designations, I have yet to see where any of them were designated as a terrorist act. So although this sounds great, so far, liability protection, no one has enjoyed the liability protection after something has happened at their facility. Some of the areas reviewed under the Safety Act are risk assessment, vulnerability consequences, staffing, leadership and organization, information management. They take a look at your cybersecurity, any stakeholder communications. They take a good look at your operations, what do you do with vendors and service providers, media access, what are your incident response plans, how do you handle security, training and evaluation, especially red teaming. The Safety Act certified local team and organizations are some of the Safety Act certified local teams are MetLife Stadium, which first got it in 2013 and expires in September of 2023. Citi Field first got it in 2017, expires August of 2023. Yankee Stadium first got their certification in 2012 and expires in December of 2022. The NFL league offices got it in 2017, expires September of 2025. And a lot of the soccer teams or NBA teams, hockey teams are under some of the umbrellas of these organizations, or I just couldn't find them because of their the facility name, the official facility name to me is unknown. So if I search for Madison Square Garden, nothing would come up. Same thing for Barclays Center. It's just, they have different business names that they officially filed under, and I'm not aware of those names. Some recent applicants, as you can see with the Yankees, the NFL, other Safety Act applicants are Boeing, Lockheed Martin. As you can see, these are facilities or businesses that are looking for some type of liability protection against terrorist act, because these institutions or businesses may very well be a terrorist target. Citi Field was one of the most complex and significant applications, up there with Bank of America and the World Financial Center. So as a Met fan, I will say that at least the Mets are doing something right. And maybe this season the team can show me some love. All right, lastly, the best practice guide for sporting and entertainment venues. This guide was developed as part of the Safety Act, and it was developed in conjunction with Rutgers University. So again, I feel very good that a Northeast school or local school is involved in this. So I feel very good that the local stadiums are all in pretty good shape regarding the Safety Act, and the best practices was produced by Rutgers University. Now, this resource guide was actually implemented and tested at MetLife Stadium and tweaked as a result. But if you wanted more information as to what the league security departments are trying to push forward and down to their local teams and stadiums, you'll find it here in this best practices guide. All right, so on now, I'm going to start discussing credentials. So this credential board is available for sale in eBay at the moment if you're interested. But what I wanted to draw your attention to is the complexity of credentials, and that the complexity does not help the security staff that sort of has to interpret the credentials someone's wearing as they're trying to get access at their particular point. So on the left there, you'll see Super Bowl game day, and it has a ton of different zones, a whole bunch of codes. On the bottom, there's even insignias or times that are going to be on the credential. Just to the right of that, there's another group of credentials that really, I don't understand what they do. I'm sure if someone sits down and explains this to the security staff prior to game day, they'll kind of understand it. Will they retain the information and continue to apply it throughout the game, or the beginning of the game, or when fans are entering, or when people are trying to get to the field or to restricted areas? That is always a point of worry. So the complexity, the bottom line is that the more complex your credential system is, you increase the likelihood for errors. Another problem with credentials is that they're often changed from per round or venue in the postseason. So credentials for, let's say in baseball, the division series will be different when you go to the league championship series, and they'll be different again for the World Series if all three are occurring at the same stadium. And now you have to ensure that the security staff at critical points fully understands what a credential is allowing access for. How can we help the security staff? Well, I picked this particular credential to demonstrate that the security staff can be assisted by credentials that contain a barcode, and at critical points, let's say outside a clubhouse or at an opening where field access is allowed, that a security guard can use an electronic device, scan the barcode, and just quickly get a green or red response indicating if that credential is allowed on past that particular point. There's some drawbacks to using devices like that. Your Wi-Fi system has to be robust, and also battery issues can create problems. So you must have backup devices ready to go that are programmed with that particular post information. One way of sort of filtering out the counterfeit credentials is limiting the access to the stadium to just one point for credentials. So anybody with a credential needs to access through one particular entryway. Media, everybody. And that way, when their credentials get scanned at that point, the counterfeit ones, because fans that have produced counterfeit credentials will be sent to that particular entry point. The counterfeit ones will be quickly detected and the person can get turned away. The worst culprit with credentials is the media. And that's also the source of the counterfeit ones that we usually find. It's some type of media credential that was authentic, but when reproduced, the barcode that we use is very fine, and through copying or taking a picture of it and then trying to reproduce it, it doesn't print properly. So, and oftentimes, many of the media credentials don't have pictures on because they are, in essence, media support staff. So the main reporter or the main media personnel will have their own credential with their picture. The support staff, the guys that run the wire or move chairs around, those do not have a picture on it, and they'll share it with others depending on who's scheduled to work. So the same credential can go through numerous hands through any one particular series. And that, of course, makes things more difficult to in ensuring that that particular credential or that particular person is authorized in a particular area. So this person here with the white shirt, I will not reveal his name, but you see in the background is President Obama. This particular person in the white shirt became famous for getting himself into secure areas. He got himself onto many Major League Baseball fields when he was not authorized, football fields, NBA, all the major sports. He took selfies standing where only authorized people would be. How he got into this particular venue, and this is the theater where the play Hamilton was playing in New York. I remember working that particular detail in the police department when the president made the visit. But nonetheless, once we became aware of this particular gentleman, we employed countermeasures, and each and every time that he attempted access into a stadium during the playoffs, he was turned away, and ultimately he was banned from entering any major league facility in the future. So if he does enter, he can be arrested and then charged with trespassing. So here's yours truly. This is in Houston, recent picture. I just want to point out the mass of people that are on the field pregame. Far more people on the field, I believe, than are in the stands. Very few fans are allowed early entry, but nonetheless, what I want to point out is just near my right shoulder, you can see the sort of the access point where most of these people got onto the field. There's a security guard there on the right, dressed all in black. What my concern is that I don't feel confident at any point that 100% of those people are on the field legitimately. If the security guard did his job 99.5% correct, then there's at least one person on that field that doesn't belong there. And we do have, and we typically do, prior to the start of the game, while all these people on the field, there are one or two security agents, resident security agents, sort of walking around and checking out who's there. And again, there's been people that I've found when I'm assigned to that kind of assignment, people I found that don't belong there. And again, they were wearing a media credential, because media, oftentimes they have particular time slots when they're allowed on the field. And if they try and get on too early, and believe me, they try, because if they can get on early, they can perhaps interview more players. Only usually the big networks get full access, or the full time block of on-field access, and then the smaller networks get less. So if you can talk a good game and you got some kind of credential hanging around your neck, you can quite possibly get past that security guard. Although he's trying his best to keep people off, we know that it's not going to be 100% of the time. So just wanted to point that out. I also have photos of similar situations here in the Super Bowl. More people on the field than in the stands, and there are more access points here at this stadium than they are in the Houston stadium. Are all those people really authorized to be on the field? How about post-game? All these people rush onto the field. Do you think that security was adequately able to screen each one of the people before they rushed onto the field? It happens. How about in NBA arenas? There's very little here in the way of barriers to keep people out. On the lower left-hand portion of the photo, I can sort of make out what looks like security looking out towards the crowd, maybe a little to the right as well. But when the clock stopped and the team won, and the rush on the field, and I'm sure you've seen it on TV, the rush onto the playing field occurs, is security really screening everyone via their credentials? It just, sometimes it just doesn't happen. Hockey, on the other hand, has an advantage. They have the barriers, the boards up all around the ice rink that kind of keep the fans at bay. And for the most part, in these pictures, you see team staff, the trainer, etc., and the front office staff, probably with all the suits on. This is Major League Soccer. I didn't want to forget talking about them. Here they have their MLS Cup champion, and you can see that they have a better handle on field access here. Is not so chaotic. It was kind of controlled. Looks like whoever's getting access to the field has to come up a couple of individual walkways and probably screen at the entry point there. So let's talk a little bit about issues during the postseason. This is the most likely period for incursions into restricted areas. Just the sheer volume of people that are there to work the game. The tunnel beneath the stadium is packed with media. It's packed with support staff. The families of players come by the busload. There's a lot of new faces that show up. And what happens a lot is that as groups, authorized groups, are moving about in these restricted areas, if they have to cross an area that is open to the public where the fans are and then re-enter a secure area, which sometimes happens, moving them from one side of the stadium to the other, you'll get some fans that start tailgating their way in. There's a lot of new faces that appear for the postseason. And the reason is not only it's the American media, but you get a lot of international media that shows up because a lot of the players have international roots. And some of the media that comes on these international, to report on the international players, don't really speak English. And they have a credential, yes. Perhaps they don't really understand where the credential allows them to go, and maybe they try and get into areas that they're not allowed to. Not that there's going to be any harm out of it, but we really don't want anyone that's shouldn't be there to be in a restricted area. I'll bring up again the credential challenge, which is with all the coding and the lettering and the colors of credentials. What does it really all mean to the security guard that is challenging someone in a particular area? This is especially when it's not an area like a high restricted area where there'd be an electronic device perhaps assigned at that point to check credentials. It may be some other area that leads to a higher security area. Is the security guard going to make the right call when confronted with the person wearing the credential that might have a good talking game and try and talk his way through? Crowd dynamics during the postseason. So let's talk a little bit about fan behavior. And in stadiums, just occasionally fans will somebody will start the wave at the far end of the stadium, and it'll go back and forth. Well, that's crowd dynamics. And this also applies if, let's say it's Game 7 of the World Series and either the home or visiting team wins, it doesn't matter, but a particular group of fans sees an opportunity because some people are being allowed onto the field, authorized people, typically family. Some people are being allowed onto the field, and these couple or handful of fans want to rush through that opening, and they can attempt it. And what happens is if during the attempt, others in the area may just, without even thinking, just try and follow them in, and then you'll get a wave, and it may just overwhelm that entry point. So that's what I kind of mean by crowd dynamics. Things can quickly go bad if there's a chink in the armor, so to say. Right, let's talk a little bit about international events, and I've done a bunch. I've done the World Baseball Classic. I've been down to Mexico with USA Baseball, and I've done some major league games in Mexico. I have not been to London yet, but some of these international event issues will apply there also. So first of all, what are some of the local customs? As you're planning your event there, you need to understand what does the local population do when they go to sporting event games? What do they bring with them? Do they bring noisemakers, which is popular in Mexico? Do they bring umbrellas? And that's something that is a prohibited item as well. Not because of, the stadium wants fans to get wet, but it's a fan experience problem in that if the people seated in front of you decide to pop open their umbrella on a sunny day, now you can't watch the game if you're sitting directly behind them. So that's a problem too. So there's no place really for us to take their prohibited item, secure it, and then give that back to them at the end of the game. That creates a fan experience issue because here they come with their elaborate umbrellas and their noisemakers, and they can't go into the stadium with it. Now, I will tell you that there are some stadiums at this time that are trying to address that issue by providing storage on site, not within the stadium, but outside the stadium somewhere, storage of items that you brought to the stadium that are not allowed in. There's a fee, of course, but it's a lot better than having to throw it away. This is not regarding an international event, but it can be equated to it. So a professional team now had to play part of last season and the season before in a minor league park. And the local population was accustomed to the minor league park prohibited items rules. And when the major league team came, now the major league rules apply. And there were many unhappy fans when they showed up the first few weeks and realized that the knife that dad gave them, even though it's a nice small knife, who knows what they use it for, but they can't bring it in. And either they have to dump it into the bucket there by the screening point or put it back in their car. And a lot of them didn't come by car, or they took a cab or whatever. And so now they had to make a decision, go home with dad's knife or dump it in the bucket and never see it again. And in that particular venue, a lot of people showed up with firearms as well, all authorized firearms carriers, but they couldn't go inside because of major league rules. Another thing to consider in these international events is how are the fans getting there? Is it mostly by car? Is it mostly by bus? Or is it rail transportation? I was at a venue in Mexico when screening was set up. We thought we had enough portals to handle what we expected to be the influx of fans. And shortly before the start of the game, a train pulls in out of view. We weren't even aware of this train and that it was going to make a stop there. And then we had, I don't know, a couple of thousand people show up in one shot. And we ended up with a very long line that took, a substantial amount of time to get through, even after uh, quickly putting together a couple of other gate access points. So that, again, goes back to fan experience. Here, Major League Baseball is in an international location trying to promote the sport, and we're making people throw their umbrellas away, their noisemakers, and creating extremely long lines. So that's some of the lessons learned so far. This is a big one. How familiar is the local population with screening technology? How familiar is the venue staff with screening technology? And we found that the standards at the stadium in Mexico, first of all, they never deployed walk-through metal detectors there. And that is one of our key screening technologies that we use. And so the fans that were arriving had no clue about how to prepare for their walk-through metal detector. Yes, signs are put out. Does everybody read them? Not really. We tried our best to get the word out at the stadium, but the problems that the staff had with using this technology and the problems that the fans had with preparing to walk through only caused massive delays. The problem with the staff was that they didn't really learn, even though we trained them, that one person has to come through at a time. What was happening a lot is that the fans trying to get in again quickly were walking through the metal detector too close to each other, and they need to be spaced out and give the screener a moment to understand what the reading was that he was getting from the detector before signaling the next person through. So the fans didn't know to wait for the signal. They didn't know what exactly to remove from their pockets, where to put it. It was a big learning curve from that. So to improve the fan experience, what is now being done in some venues, and it started with the games held in London, is that screening staff, a select group, is being taken from a United States facility and taken overseas. And we can't do that with everybody we need at these screening or at these stadium locations, but we take enough where there's at least a couple at each gate or port of entry. Another thing that was holding things up was the bag screening process. It was, again, we did our best in trying to train this group, and we spent, I don't know, 3-4 days with the staff and trying to get them to do things a certain way. But the bag screening process was hit or miss. Some bags were too big. Some bags we felt weren't screened, wasn't screened properly. So that was a big issue. So expect your international event to have an issue with your throughput. It will be degraded. Next, I want to talk a little bit about customs and immigration. Teams and staff are subject to all customs and immigration laws in whatever country they're visiting. However, for the most part, accommodations are made so that the team and the staff are screened separately from the general public. It could be in view of the general public in the same gallery or plaza or building, but they will typically accommodate our request for segregated processing. where do we have problems, or where does any team that has an international event have problems? Usually it's with passports and visas. Passport gets misplaced, or the player does not have the proper visa, or has not applied for a visa. For the most part, the US citizen players don't have issues because we're going typically to countries that visas are not needed. But there are a lot of international players across all sports that, depending on their country of origin, whatever passport they hold, it could be a country that needs to apply for a visa to enter Mexico, Britain. So is this a security issue? Well, not until a player or staff member gets held up at customs or immigration for an issue. The rest of the team and the rest of the staff are not going to stay and wait until they sort things out. They'll continue on, and now that player becomes a security issue because someone has to get him, once he's finished with processing, to join the team or whatever staff member to take them to their work location. Another issue is planning for medical evacuation. And this is particularly true if you're going to a country that perhaps may not have the best doctors for particular injuries or illnesses. And plans have to be made so that evacuation of these sick or injured players or staff members can happen virtually immediately and then taken back to the United States for proper medical care. And these medical evacuation services will have doctors on board the plane, et cetera, full medical gallery on these planes to treat the patient and stabilize them until they get back to the United States. Also, when you have an international event, you also have to plan on how to evacuate in the event that there is some type of unrest or a political situation where you can no longer stay and you need to get out immediately. That becomes somewhat of an issue depending on the consulates that are available to help coordinate your plans and what resources are available nearby. All right, lastly, drones. Drones have increased in popularity, right? The cost has gone down for a quality drone that can give you nice imaging. As a result, they're really proliferating out there. The FAA is now requiring registration of drones. And if you claim you're a recreational user, you just have to pass a simple test and register your drone, and away you go. But the FAA registration requirement has not slowed down the incidence of drone incursions over stadiums and arenas. So the stadium operators are fighting back. They're deploying detection systems, and the detection systems are giving them the opportunity and the information needed to determine where these drones are being launched from. And if they can get security or law enforcement to the scene quickly enough, they can oftentimes speak with the operator of the drone and have him recall the drone in a safe manner. And then they'll take the they'll continue the investigation from there, whether it's just an accident or if criminal charges are applicable, depending on your jurisdiction, things will get sorted out. But the detection systems are out there. The FAA still does not allow anyone, any of these stadium operators or facility operators to somehow intervene in the flight path of the drone. You can't do anything about it. The drone's going to do what it's going to do. You detected it, you know where it's launched from. That's the extent of what you can do to the drone. However, during championship games, Super Bowl, World Series, there are federal assets that are deployed that can detect also the launch site of the drones, but can also mitigate the flight of the drones, and also the penalties for violating the airspace around these facilities. It becomes significant because around these venues during the championship games, temporary flight restrictions are put into place. And that now makes it a federal issue when these drone operators are detained. All right, I've talked enough for now. This is time for anyone that has questions to ask.
Carlos?
Yes, go ahead.
So you mentioned some arenas or stadiums looking into like some storage type of facility. Would that be something like bus locker type thing, mobile bus lockers, something like that?
Yes. Yes, and of course, they're doing that, and they're allowed to do that if they so wish. They cannot store any of the items within the stadium itself.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're going to charge you for that service. So it's just, I think, another way of making money. And some teams will capitalize on it and some won't.
Mm-hmm. Interesting idea.
Hey, Carlos.
Yes.
I was just curious, you talked about the DHS Safety Act. Do you find that the teams and the stadiums that have the credential, which I think you said was the higher of the two, do you find that the security level is commensurate with that, with having that certification compared to other stadiums that maybe don't have the higher credential or don't have any of the DHS credential at all?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So those that have certification have really gone through an extensive review of all their systems and processes that that have led to them being granted that certification. Those teams that haven't gotten it yet are working towards it. So it's not like there's an option of don't do it. We're not going to spend our time trying to get the certification. They are working towards it. Once they get their first certification, and it becomes so much easier when it's time to renew their certification because they already kind of have everything in place and running smoothly and have only been tweaking it as different threats have emerged or different circumstances have changed a few things. So it's always the first certification is the hardest for any of these teams. It can take years. It takes a lot of investment in time, and the teams are being prodded along in all leagues to ultimately establish that certification. Now, in places where there's multi-use, let's talk about Yankee Stadium, for example. The New York City Football Club plays there. They play their soccer games there. So the stadium will get the certification and not necessarily the New York City Football Club. but the New York City Football Club doesn't need a certification. Perhaps MLS should be working towards their certification as a league, just like the NFL and the NBA. It was the NFL that got their league certification. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. That was a great answer.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hey, Carlos, I got a question. I'm kind of curious how maybe like improvised weapons are handled. Like somebody walks in with something that might not otherwise be permitted, but they turn it into something that might not be permitted when they get in. The classic example that I think of is called a Millwall brick. The Millwall Football Club, their fans were prevented from bringing in like sticks and stuff. So they actually would take a newspaper, roll it up really tight, fold it in half, and it became like a really like bad bludgeoning weapon that they could use. Are there any policies in place to, so you can eject people who do stuff like that?
Yes. What I have seen at stadiums is that at each gate, there's one supervisor that is there just to make the call on any of these items that his screening staff sees that has a question about that isn't clearly defined as a prohibited item. And then that particular supervisor's call is usually final. All right, well, if there are no more questions, I'm going to turn it back over to Craig.
Thanks, Carlos. I think that was wonderful. That was so much more, a lot of information and a lot more than I thought actually was going on behind the scenes. So I know I definitely learned a lot, and thank you for the time and for sharing your expertise. I think I hope everyone learned something. I know I did. I learned a lot tonight. So excellent presentation. No other questions, so I think we'll wrap it up. Everyone has a good night, and we'll send out correspondences. So keep your eyes open for the in-person networking event. Stay well, and we'll see you in March.